Hello, everybody. I'm Susan Clinton, and this is Tough to Treat. And I'm here with my co-host, Erica Mello. Welcome, Erica.
Welcome, Susan. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. The end of winter is approaching here,
Oh, thank God.
or so they say. We'll see if it. We haven't had much of a winter. We've had very dark and rainy days here, but
I, I know.
looking
So
forward to spring and the active season. So,
exactly.
anyway, yeah, let's get right to it.
Okay.
So I have a gentleman that I've been seeing. Um, this is a 60-year-old male that came to me by referral of some other healthcare practitioners that with numbness at the balls of his feet.
Mm,
So,
hmm
and he got in touch with me and said, "I hope you can help me with some answers. But I've got this numbness, weird feeling on the balls of my feet, and I want to have a discussion about it." So he came in, and we sat and we visited and talked for a while. He attributes this. He's a very healthy 6-year-old male that walks everywhere. When he's in the cities, he spends his time walking from meeting to meeting. When he's at home in his office, he, exercises and moves around a lot. He's not somebody that hasn't moved and then tried to move too much and those kinds of things. He's used to moving all the time. Long story short, he went to a vacation where he had to do a pretty steep hike, and which that wasn't a problem, but it was coming down that was the problem. And he
mm,
said the whole way down he felt like he was having some knee issues at the time too.
mm.
And he said that he probably shouldn't have done the hike with his knee because he felt like he was protecting his knee the whole time coming down. And basically, he said that his feet were being crammed into the toes of his shoes
Hmm.
all the way
Okay.
down this very, very long, very steep hike.
Okay.
And he feels like his issues began around that time.
Okay. The ball, but his foot issues, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Got it.
The knee issue is fine. He
Okay.
was having problems with the knee around that time. Since then, the knee is cleared up and it's not an issue at all. But he's left with this numbness on the balls of his feet that get worse when he walks in his dress shoes. That gets worse when he flexes his toes. He feels like he said he goes. It feels like there's padding in there, and it's very bothersome to him. So he has been to his physicians.
hmm
They've run EMGs. They've tested out all of the different things, and he does not have any type of neuropathy
Okay.
that we would consider like a metabolic neuropathy. He's again, his blood work is very good. So that all of those kinds of things has been ruled out, and he's just wondering. He goes, "What have I done to my feet? And is this ever going to get better?" And when he puts on shoes that have a wider toe box and his feet are allowed to spread out better, he
hmm
doesn't have nearly the issues. So it tends to come so after he's been sitting for a while and he stands up, he feels the numbness initially a lot.
hmm
And then sometimes as he moves around without shoes on, it feels better. If he's wearing dress shoes, if he takes his shoes off immediately, it feels better.
hmm
If he wears a wider toe box shoe, it doesn't bother him as much. It was just very tricky kind of figuring this whole thing out. Um,
This is very reminiscent. I have not know the podcast number. A patient that we talked about of mine, I can link to. I can put it in the show notes. But
mhm,
very similar to a patient that I was
mhm.
treating. I forgot the podcast number. Um, but continue. Go ahead.
Yeah. So we did a lot of different things. We did slump tests. We did neural tension tests. Anything to see
hmm
if I could bring the numbness on
Yep.
outside of weight bearing. It got worse when he went up on his toes. It got better when he walked on his heels. So I kind of started thinking, okay, if he's
Uh-huh.
walking on his heels and his toes are coming up, it's a weight bearing issue, much more than it may be a neural tension issue.
So it's worse when he goes up on his toes?
Yeah,
Okay.
when he stands on it, when
Got it.
he brings his heels up in the
Heel
air. Yeah,
raises. Got it. And better when he's on his heels, walking on
yeah,
his heels.
yeah. If
Got
he
it.
can walk on his heels, all of a sudden it starts to feel better.
Okay. Got it.
So we did a lot of
Hmm.
bending over and squatting and moving around to see, just long story short, I don't know if it's a correlate or not, but his thorax was very stiff. His neck is stiff. Um, but he didn't have any problems with it, as far as like pain or,
Right.
anything like that. He
Yep.
tends to cope with it pretty well. Not a lot of rotation through the trunk, through the thorax, which,
Mhm.
kind of always is something I like to see be
Mhm.
there because I just think it's helpful for people.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of how he presented with, on the exam on his feet. His toes are kind of stiff and a little bit curled, so trying to stretch them out.
Mhm.
We kind of looked at that a little bit. I just looked at the mobility of the metatarsals and, to see if they're moving well. He was stiff on both sides,
Mhm.
kind of like just stiff curled feet, on the ground, when he's walking and moving around, and they were stiff laying down too.
Mhm.
And, there are a lot of calluses on the balls of his feet,
Mhm.
a lot. One foot a little bit more than the other, but a lot of callus formation there, and on the sides of his toes and on the sides of his big toes.
Right.
So, I took note of that too to kind of think about a little bit. He had a pair of just Merrill slide ins that, had, like I said, had a wider toe box and a
Yep.
little bit more support for the feet, and he could walk pretty easily without having too many symptoms there. So the problem is that he wants to walk in his dress shoes, when
Ah.
he's in the city, and I get that.
Yep.
So, but he wasn't going to be traveling for a while, and so it was an opportunity to see if we could just calm some stuff down and kind of just take a look at everything. So one of the things that I did with him was I got him just doing some, some rotations and stuff in his thorax and starting to loosen, see if we could get that moving a little bit. He did have a little bit of some neural tension in his arms.
Mhm.
So we started kind of doing and sitting with his legs out straight, your hands up on your ears, doing some rotation and some different things to just see if we can't start mobilizing the neural system all the way through. Even though I couldn't like trigger off his numbness any other way, but to have him stand on it,
Yep.
the pressure on the balls of his feet.
Yep.
So I just, so kind of my differentials at that time were going to be, are we looking at, long tracking neural tension, with something going on maybe in the dura? Are we looking at, peripheral kind of nerves that just got injured?
Right. Right.
Just need to
Right. In some
recover. Yeah.
strange way. Yep.
Yeah. So it was about the time I saw him was about 7 months since it started.
7 months.
So it
Okay.
started like 7 months before his first 7 months around in there, 7 to 8 months in there for
And
his
that's
before
when
his
he was
first
walking
visit.
down when he was going down
Yeah,
the hill.
yeah, that's when it all started. hmm
Hmm.
So he's also a guy that actively goes to Pilates twice a week, and
Mhm.
he does a lot of, he watches what he eats. He's just kind of ran into this thing, and he's never had anything kind of chronic like this before, other than his knee. And he just said that was just wear and tear and things like that from the knee stuff. So one of the things that I decided to do was just really start saying, okay, let's see what happens if we can just get this to calm down. So we made a pact that if he's walking, that he's supposed to wear, so he decided he could wear his, um, wider Merrill shoes and get by pretty easily. And so we decided to, okay, let's stay in those shoes for right now. Let's don't put on any shoes that are irritable and cause you problems. And then let's also figure out how long you can walk in those shoes before the situation starts. And so he felt like he could walk forever in the Merrill shoes, that it wasn't an issue at all. So I just said, well, as soon as the symptoms come on, no matter what you're doing, one of the things that makes it feel better is to get, pull his toes up and walk on his heels. So I said, can you do that? As soon as you
Mhm.
feel the symptoms, can you do that? And so we, so we kind of played around with that just a little bit. And he said, it actually feels so much better when I do that. So he was kind of motivated to make that
Mhm.
happen. And we played around with bendovers and, and some squats. And I said, what happens if you, bend over or you squat? Does that, tend to make it better? And he really couldn't tell. And I said, well, you could just try it,
Does
as you
extension
go.
Right. Does extension make him worse or side bending make him worse? Excuse
No,
me.
no,
None of that. Okay.
none of that.
Hmm.
Zero.
Okay.
Whenever he's back on his heels, he feels better. So, it's just like the compression
Oh,
onto the balls of the feet that
right.
really bother
Right.
him.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Right.
So anyway, so because we did like a whole bunch of stuff just trying to kind of like figure this out and look at it, and he's using these very long walks for exercise that he can't do now.
Mm.
So we finished up, and I just said, just do this. Let's just see if we can settle this down. Just kind of wear the bigger shoes. Pull yourself up on your heels if it's bothering you. He's got his own business. He goes, I can walk around in my stocking feet at work. Whatever. I just
Yep.
don't want you to push into symptoms.
Right.
And I want you to monitor what it feels like after you stand up from sitting, since you're not wearing your dress shoes, because that was one of the big things. Was he would stand up from sitting and his feet would be more numb. The
More
balls
numb.
of his feet would be more numb.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So, which made me kind of think about what's happening
You said just.
neurologically with him in that sitting position, slumped,
Yep.
and then coming up to stand, like we were
Mm-hmm.
talking about on
Yep.
the lady that I had a couple of podcasts ago.
Yep.
So, just kind of looking at that, I said, just kind of, and I don't want you to get into the situation where your feet are so numb that you got to take your shoes off, and then as soon as you take your shoes off, they feel better. So
Right.
I'm already kind of thinking, I'm wondering if his shoes fit. So,
Right. Right. Exactly. The compression of the
yeah,
dress shoes. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that was the end of the first visit. And if you have any questions, go ahead, and then I'll take you into what we did next.
Yeah. So in standing, was his center of mass on so far forward, or was he centered, or how was he like? How was he in
He
standing?
was actually pretty centered.
He was.
He really was.
Did he look different? I don't know if did he look different barefoot versus stand. Did he bring his dress shoes to the eval, or
No,
maybe no, he didn't. Okay,
no.
so got it. Okay. So in barefoot and whatever sneakers or whatever, he looked the same pretty
Yeah,
much.
yeah,
Okay.
pretty much.
Hmm.
Other than, like I said, kind of the stiffness in his feet and the curling of the toes.
Yep.
And like I said, the calluses on the balls of his feet, and also along the sides of his little toe and his big toe.
Right. So clearly he's putting extra pressure or weight on the balls of his feet.
Hmm.
Did you do like straight leg raises with the
Yeah,
biases and all that? All
hmm
negative?
all negative.
Okay.
And he does that a lot in Pilates. He puts his feet in the straps, and he
Yep.
goes up with the straight legs and moves them all around and all the circling directions and everything. So the second time he came in, I wanted to start seeing what we could do to start. I just said, we're not having any. He said, first of all, he said wearing the other shoes and everything was good, and that he really did mindfully, whenever his feet were numb, try to walk on his heels some. He said that did help.
Mm-hmm.
He said maybe there's a little bit of difference. He goes, certainly just being able to walk with these shoes on are not an issue. But he keeps going back to, but what do I need to do with this? And it's like, okay, well, we'll get there. Let's just,
Did he
this didn't start overnight. Let's see what what we can do to get this to start changing.
right, what was his foot type? Was it a rigid? I mean, he was gripping that the he so
He's a bit of a rigid foot type.
rigid
Yeah.
foot type, right?
Hmm.
Okay. Okay.
Not terribly so, but
No.
definitely more on the rigid side.
Right. Right. Okay.
So, but he was doing all of his thoracic exercises, and he loves those. He says those feel very good.
Yeah. In
Feel
the
good on
Pilates. Yeah.
anyone. So he's
Right.
like, so he was happy to do that. And so we just started kind of like working on. I just actually did a lot of manual work on his feet,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought, let's just get in and let's see if we can't just create some space and maybe bump up a little circulation. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he had good capillary refill. There was no reason to think there wasn't. But when you talk about nerves being bloodsuckers, I thought, well,
Yep.
I wonder if maybe he just, or sometimes people can compress their nerves so much that they get a little bit numb,
Mm-hmm.
until they can kind of like do their thing and become unnumb again.
Right.
And that was
Right.
kind of the whole hypothesis I was going on. It's like, okay, if we can get this to not be aggravated, or like not keep pushing into the point to where he had extra numbness, then maybe we had a shot at getting this to kind of start to change.
Right, because when he goes on his heels, you would think that's sort of winding up the whole system a bit,
Exactly,
you
exactly.
know?
But it
So
actually relieves it. So,
exactly. So I mean, I agree with you there because sometimes when you can't find anything, slump, straight leg raise, anything,
hmm
nerves do are bloodsuckers, and that's why some soft tissue, heat, whatever, anything to get the blood flow going will help. And I would
hmm
have done the exact same thing with the
yeah.
work on the
So
foot.
we did. We started working, and he really, of course, who wouldn't enjoy that? But he did
Right.
like that very much. And I just started doing a lot of just toe traction and toe straightening and toe flexing,
Mm.
back like dorsiflexing and pulling back, the
Yep.
whole foot, the whole everything, and just really working that. And then I set him up with a really thick kind of gray TheraBand
Mm-hmm.
that went around his ball of his foot and his toes so
Yep.
that he would be like really pulling the whole foot back
Yes,
and
I love that one. Yep.
dorsiflexion with the toes coming back
Yep.
and everything. And I said, I want you to add this in, periodically throughout the day. And he asked for two so he could have one at his office because
Yeah.
that's just this guy. He does everything.
Yep.
And I said, okay, so we're gonna add something else. Because I said one of the things that I think needs to happen here, and it's just a test retest thing here, but I want to see if we can get your heart rate up and consistently over a few weeks and see what happens there too. So running is out of the question. Walking long distances up hills and down hills is out of the question because that's what brought this on in the first place.
Right.
So I said, "Do you have access to a stationary bike?" And he said, "Yes." And I said,
Mm-hmm.
"Can you get on it and just start going after it?" I
Yep.
said, "You need to get up, get your heart rate up, and start getting a sweat in." And I said, "The reason is I'm just thinking this might help enhance circulation everywhere." But I
Mm-hmm.
said, "There's something to the idea that we get this cardiovascular pump going. We get a lot of different feelings in the body, for whatever reason." And I said,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't hurt to have some perfusion going on around. Let's
Absolutely.
just add it in. It's not going to hurt, but I really think it's going to help.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that's kind of where we left that. So he's come in for a couple of visits, and we've been working on his feet, and just adding a few more just movement exercises and stuff for his thorax and his neck and upper body, so to decrease the load on the feet, and doing the long toe thing, as he's
Mm-hmm.
walking, and because he's got more range of motion now in his toes.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did a lot of that, and then he's back, and his comments are he loves the exercise. He loves riding the bike. That really does make a difference. And he really feels like that's been one of the big difference makers, besides all the other things we've been doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so we
Mm-hmm.
had a long conversation about his shoes. And he
Mm-hmm.
was telling me, he goes, I'm ordering Merrill tennis shoes. I'm doing this because I love the way the Merrills are fitting. This is making such a difference. And I said, let's talk about your dress shoes. I said, how old are they? Well,
20 years old.
he said, well, no, they actually, I was expecting that, but he said, no, he goes, one's about 2 years old, one's about a year old. And I said, this is the feeling I'm getting. I said, you may could have tolerated those shoes before you did that downhill hike, but now the situation is that the ball of your foot really needs to spread out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking that the reason the Merrills feel so good for you is because the toe box is wider. I said, take it home and put your
Yep.
shoe up against it and look at the difference in from the toe box. And I showed him where to look and measure.
Yep.
And I said, and then, there's a couple of stores in town where there's really good people that know how to fit shoes. And I said, I said, where do you buy your dress shoes? And he was telling me. And I said, well, he knows about this other store in town, Little's in Squirrel Hill. And I said, you've been to Little's before, I'm sure. And he goes, oh yeah. He goes, I forgot about them. And I said, you should take yourself up there and go and try on some shoes. Because I said, you're going to know immediately when you put them on if they're going to work or not.
Yep.
And then this is the funny story because people forget to tell you things.
Mm-hmm.
He said, well, I forgot to tell you last week. There was he had to go to a funeral.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I put on my dress shoes and went to the funeral. And I said, so how long did you wear them? He said, probably about 2.5, 3 hours. And I said, did you have any problems? And he said, not as many. He goes, now reflecting on it, he goes, I didn't have as much problem as I thought I should have had.
Interesting.
So he's already
Yeah.
getting better,
Yes, of
which was
course.
like, okay, well, that would have been a handy piece of information to have
Exactly.
had.
Right.
But anyway, they don't free. So anyway, so now that his job is to go shoe shopping, and
Mm-hmm.
I said, because we talked a lot about a lot of different things. We talked a lot about the girl trick, which is wear the shoes that are comfortable as soon as you get in the door of the building, pop into the bathroom, switch your shoes, and
Yep.
go. And he
Yep.
said, I don't know if I would do that. And that's okay. I get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not going to tell him to do anything he's not going to do.
Right.
We were offering suggestions. But I think the shoe shopping one is the best one because it's like you just need to get a bunch of shoes and wear them around your house because he's got a trip
Mm-hmm.
coming up where he's going to need to be in his dress shoes. And I said, we
Yep.
need to solve this problem, but I don't want you to wear them all the way to where we aggravate everything up again.
Right.
And so I talked to him about the calluses on his feet. And I said, this is why I think your shoes are too short and they're too narrow. Because, you see where your calluses are just where you're being, where your feet are being, stressed here.
Mm-hmm.
And since he hasn't been doing that, it's been about 5 weeks since he hasn't been wearing the other shoes. The calluses are
Mm-hmm.
already getting better because he doesn't have the
Interesting.
friction against his, against the balls of his feet, against the sides of his
Yeah.
first and
Yeah.
fifth empty P's.
Yep. You wonder
So
if his dress shoes are too small
yeah,
too.
that's what I said. Too small,
Yeah.
too short, too
Yeah.
narrow.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I said, a lot of people walk in, and I said, and I told him the story. I said, my husband, those people out there who know me, I finally call the professor. I said, every time we go to get Steve's shoes, every single time, he sits there and he tells everybody that he wears a 12. The man hasn't worn a 12, and since, in 10 years, maybe 15. It's like, I don't know why you keep telling everybody you wear a 12.
That's funny.
And he goes, because that's what I wear. It's like, no, you don't. You don't wear a 12.
Yeah.
You always have to order your shoes because you wear a 13 and a half.
Oh, that's so
So
funny.
it's just like sometimes you can get away with a 13, but
Oh,
it's
that's.
just so funny, because we get that stuck in our head. This is my shoe size.
I know. There's nothing because I've had foot issues over the years, and there's nothing that a foot hates is like compression. Because I spin, and when I get in my spin shoes, and I know immediately that I have a neuroma on my right foot. The shoes are too tight. I have to loosen them. I've had to take my foot out of the shoe. It becomes numb. Any
Hmm.
kind of compression in the toe box for me is not good. I wear Uggs in the winter. They're wide toe boxes. I feel very good in those. When I put tight sneakers on, I don't feel good. My
Hmm.
feet do not like compression. Most feet don't.
Yeah.
But I would err on the side of a bigger shoe anyway, just because you could pad the shoe. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, but so I think I've convinced him to go shoe shopping
hmm
and to see what he can come up with that's going to be a little bit different. And I kind of told him, I said, you need to talk to them about what's going on and what I've told you so that they can help you,
hmm
find, because I said, if you need a narrower toe, you're going to have to go to a longer shoe. You just have to,
yeah,
because toe box is going to be too narrow.
right.
So you're not going to be able to wear your regular size. So you just have to
hmm
kind of think about that. You may want to get a wider, like a flatter toe, so that you just have to see,
Yeah, and
and
this.
and be at peace with it as much as you possibly can. But it's been
Yeah.
interesting watching him because he's been doing all of this stuff. I don't know, this is kind of one of those things why I decided to bring it up on the podcast because I'm not sure what helped.
hmm
I'm, to me, it's three things. Um, because I paid attention to what was important to him at his feet,
hmm
and I listened to him and didn't dismiss him and just say, well, there's nothing we can do for numbness. Good luck with that, which is what everybody else has done.
hmm
And then I think adding the cardiovascular piece. So I don't know
Definitely.
which was the best one. It would have been
hmm
great to have been able to take him and tease him out and just let's start with the cardiovascular stuff and see if that makes everything better. Let's start with this and see. So I did start with the best therapeutic alliance I could find, which was listening and really helping him
hmm
problem solve what he can do about walking and how he can keep that going because walking's very important to him and
hmm
working on his feet and then adding the cardiovascular component in. Um,
Yeah.
Don't know
Yeah.
which one has done it, but he started. He told me the other day. He said, "I am significantly better than when I started. Is it perfect? No, but he goes now I can crunch my toes and I don't have that feeling that there's a padding in there,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't. He said it's just. He goes, it's not all the way there yet. He goes, but it's made such a difference, and he thinks it's the riding the bike. And I said, possibly,
Yeah.
but I think also just getting the compression off your feet and allowing whatever was going to change to start changing and
Right.
not
Right.
continuing to do the same things over and over. And I said, sometimes we have things and we can do them and we can tolerate them and everything's fine. And then we do something like that. And I said, hiking boots and hiking shoes are very different from other shoes that you wear. And, a steep climb down, sometimes there is. I said, people injure their toes all the time and injure
Mm-hmm.
their feet all the time on hikes. It's not unique to you, but it is the situation is unique to you.
Yes.
Because you've never had anything like this before, and it's frustrating because it does feel like it's weird when you can't feel a part of your foot.
Right.
But the most interesting thing of all is he's never had any pain in his feet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Never any like that paresthesia, like tingling
Mm-hmm.
or any of that kind of stuff. So,
Mm-hmm.
if he did have a neuroma, it didn't set up like one.
No. I mean, aromas are painful. I mean,
Yeah, very
jeepers.
painful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it did have a lot of pain in his feet when he finished the hike.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and understandably
Yeah.
so. Of
Yeah.
course you would, and I imagine you
Yeah.
felt some pain everywhere else too. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
if you're not used to doing that and don't know how to sidestep it down, there's ways that hikers kind of work where they have to do that steep, climb down. And I don't think he even had a walking stick. I don't know if he
I was
did or
just gonna
not.
ask that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
That was like so far in the. I told him, I said, you do hikes like that in the future, you need to get a couple of trekking poles.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Thing
agree.
take the pressure off your feet, when you're going downhill. Uphill's
Yeah.
not so bad, but it's the downhill
Yeah.
that can get people more than anything else. So, but anyway,
I know.
I'd love your thoughts on it compared to some of the stuff you've seen because that's kind of where we are right now.
Yeah. I like the gray band with the dorsiflexion, plantar flexion, inversion, eversion,
Mhm.
stretching the toe
Mhm.
flexors, bringing
Mhm.
because the gray band. I mean, we that's the only time I use a gray band is to
Yeah.
literally take that. They're in long sit or whatever, and they just go
Mhm.
back and forth. They like to put their feet into the like it's to fit the gray band because it's wide enough, and they
Yep.
can go inversion, and that does get blood flow for sure.
Mhm.
He's not going to spend 20-30 minutes like doing that like he did on the bike, but it clearly I would have done the same thing there because I like that. And even if they can do it lying down, whatever. I mean, it does bring blood flow, and I do. The bike is a great idea actually because it
Mhm.
also brings blood flow. It gets him off his feet. I don't think this is anything to do with the spine. So I think it really has more to do with, I mean, local spinal stuff, more uh,
Mhm.
not neuropathic, but it just you needed to get blood flow in there. And
Mhm.
if is the foot is his rigid foot type the issue? Maybe, maybe
Mhm.
not. You know, I always tell patients, especially if it's in the summer and they have access to a beach, to put your feet in the sand and just move your feet around the sand. There's at least in New York, they have it at our local drugstores, this thing called kinetic sand. It's like a sandbox.
Hmm.
And they put their feet in the sand. I remember David Butler saying that who doesn't love a foot in sand, right?
Yeah.
They move feet around the sand. And sometimes I'll tell patients if they like baths, just put your feet under the running water, the hot water, and just do some movements. And that does help. Anything that brings blood flow will help. And
Yeah.
I agree with you there. If you thought that the foot was, the issue in terms of mechanics, you could have done a ton of stuff. But I don't necessarily think, judging by his history, and that it would have been so useful. And I'm into this whole thing now with patients. Tell me how much time you have for exercise,
Yeah.
and if they have 5 minutes, you're the two things that you did, I would have done. I mean,
Yeah.
that's and
And this
and
guy just took the time to do all of this stuff. He was kind of,
yeah,
has the freedom and the ability to do that,
yeah. I
in
mean,
his office and stuff like that. Because he says, he said, unless I'm face to face with people, it's just me and the group in the office. And because I don't care if they, wear shoes or not. He said, I like to walk around in my socks in the office. So,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I
so he
think
was
that
kind of already a little bit free that way.
yeah, it's funny. I had a patient who, she had a FHL issue, but similar symptoms. She ended up putting some of those warmers that you put in your gloves for skiing on her feet throughout the day, and she actually felt better. And once again, that's warmth, that's blood flow, and that really helped her. I was just going to say something, and it just slipped my mind. For the 5 minutes. So if people have 15 minutes, you could have done anything on his hands and
Hmm.
knees or down dog,
Hmm.
bending and flexing his knees, plantar
Hmm.
flexion, dorsiflexion, and down dog. There's so many different things that they can do. They can do, like squatting and, any movement
Hmm.
basically that involves the whole body and a little bit of the foot, um, inversion, eversion,
Yeah,
dorsiflexion.
just changing the pressures on his feet
Anything,
as much as
exactly.
anything. Hmm.
Exactly. Squatting with his toes raised on his
Hmm.
heels, or,
Hmm.
squatting if he can tolerate it the other way, and just sort of moving him in and out of that movement. But I'm finding lately that people just don't have the time to do a ton of stuff and you'll
No.
have the rare person who's like, I'm committed, I want to do it. And that's
Yeah.
great. That's a perfect, right? But most people don't. So you give them one or two things that are
Right.
gonna
But
be gonna
the
give you the most
idea,
bang for your buck.
right. The idea is that even if you can only do 5 minutes a day, we can make big changes 5 minutes every day.
Absolutely.
You
The
know?
brain's so plastic.
Yeah.
Its senses change so quickly. And I agree. It's interesting though. What if he didn't have access to a bike? Because I have a lot of patients who don't have access to bikes, believe it or not, here in New York. You wouldn't
To
have
a
had him
stationary
run.
bike. Hmm.
Yeah, you wouldn't have had him do elliptical, like, because they don't have access to
No,
a
because
gym.
he did have an elliptical in his home, and I
Yeah,
actually said at this point in time, let's don't,
yeah,
because a lot of people get foot numbness on the elliptical.
yeah. I did when I first started. Yeah,
Because the pressures and the tightness
yeah,
of the plantar nerves and
yep,
things like that. So
yep,
I asked him to not get on the elliptical right now.
yeah,
I said it's not forever.
yep,
It's not forever. You don't have to throw your machine away. It's just that I wanted you to be able to do this. Thank goodness he had a bike. I'm not sure where we could have gone. I guess did he have
yeah,
access to a gym where he could get to one? Did he act? I'm not sure that a rowing
yeah,
machine would have been good for him in the
yeah,
beginning.
yeah.
So, the only other thing I could think of is that if he could get into a pool and
Yeah, I was
get
thinking
in the
that
deep
also.
end,
Yeah,
and just really get your heart rate up,
yeah,
kind of working in the deep end.
yeah, or just
Uh,
yeah, or just, if they absolutely can't do any of that, maybe just increase the volume on the green, and do 50, 60 reps
yeah.
multiple times a day with the gray
Hmm.
band, or
Yep.
add teeny squats, or just something to, you have to problem solve a little bit there. But
Hmm.
in that case, if he didn't, I would just increase the volume to heavily on what he's doing already, and then maybe add something else, on all
Hmm.
fours or down dog or something like that, and see if you get the same results. But lucky he had access to a bike, and
Yeah. Yeah.
fabulous.
So,
Yeah, awesome.
all
This is a good one.
right.
I like it.
Yes.
Susan?
Okay. So, anything you want to add before we say goodbye?
No, we still are our wonderful Facebook group, and we are also, it's tough to treat in parentheses, and so tough to treat and then parentheses podcast. If anybody's on Facebook, they could just do a search for that. We are also trying to get to 100 reviews on iTunes. So if people who've listened to the podcast and have written us a review, we really truly appreciate it. And anybody who has found value and has not written one, we would most appreciate it if you do. It could be short. It's helpful for us to get our ranking up on iTunes. So we'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you
Bye.
next time.
Goodbye.